new episode of The Brand Called You. Today, I have a very accomplished individual who's with me, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy listening to his story. Dhaval Gupta, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Dhaval is from the University of Wisconsin. He's the director of CyberMedia, and he heads the digital initiative of the group. And he's a mentor of WittyFeed and a director of DUB, which I think you started when you were in university.
Right.
So Dhaval, tell us a little bit about your early career and what made you get into this business.
Right. So after graduating from college, one thing was clear that with the kind of friends I was surrounded with, I think, and of course, seeing sort of my father go through his entrepreneurial journey, the bug was bitten. Wanted to try and do something. Myself, but in order to do that, I thought that let me go through a journey where I get sort of more exposure, more learnings. And so I immediately after college started working as a consultant first in Boston for about a year, followed by Singapore. So a bit of a
in the media space.
No, actually, this was in the IT industry domain, and looking at sort of a lot of market research data and processing that in an effective manner. So that was fantastic because got a not only an international exposure but also an understanding of I think how to process data in an effective manner, which I think I really carried from forward from there. Post that, when I did sort of come back, was very eager to make sure that we were able to create a lot of the whole world was talking about digital. Obviously, the transformation was well underway, and there are a huge number of opportunities in media, in digital internet economy space, and today I think many sectors are very directly impacted by this. Correct. So it was a fairly easy decision, given all these parameters, and the media, of course, was something I was familiar with. Having said that, one had to do some sort of redo, if you want to call it, whatever the business models were as far as digital media was concerned. And in addition to that, we then also added in the digital marketing and the data part of it. Okay. Right. So today, I would say there are three major initiatives within CyberMedia. So the media part is there, but a lot of our growth engine comes from the digital marketing as well as the data part.
So just as a little bit of trivia, in 1983-84, when I was with ITC. We were transferred to Calcutta, and I was made the divisional controller of the information systems division. And in those days, the perk used to be to get a subscription to DataQuest.
Okay.
So only people who were part of the division were allowed to. Company paid subscription.
Right. And so we got to redo this, except with a digital bed.
Right.
So something we're working on. Looking forward to it.
I'm sure. Since DataQuest is one of your group magazines, So tell me, you are digital. Your group traditionally has been the traditional printing. Right. Over the years, how have you started to see the change to digital media? And is print still relevant?
Yeah, so I think with brands like DataQuest, PCQuest, Voice in Data, we have a very strong niche in the industry, right? And in terms of the influencers, I think we engage them very proactively across not just the print, but also in terms of events and, of course, the digital mediums as well. I think where the industry has transformed is that one is that there is a much higher degree of reader centric or the user centricity.
Correct.
Right? So we gotta be able to touch base with the reader wherever they are available in the comfort that they want to consume the content in. So I think I think the days where somebody would essentially want to only go through the content that is available in a magazine versus being able to read it as per their convenience and also pick the kind of content or the sections of content that they specifically want to consume.
Correct.
That's where I think the models have transformed. And I think digital has, of course, moved very aggressively. I think the next generation will continue to push on that. Having said that, to answer the second part of your question, I think print continues to remain very, very relevant. I think last year the industry came out, a couple of years back, the industry and INS board came out with a campaign which is print is proof, and I think that did well. Ultimately, print will find its own space just like radio did after television came.
Correct.
Right? So print, radio, television, all of these are mediums, and they find their own niches, their own spaces. Again, I think it's the users and their behavioral aspects that will really determine how a particular medium is carried forward. So yeah, I don't think print is going to go away. It'll probably take a backseat to the influence that it used to drive. Having said that, the credibility with print is still there.
Absolutely, touch and feel factor.
Absolutely, and I think frankly, even in the digital ecosystem, that's coming about very rapidly, which is really it's coming down to a lot of credible content, right? Earlier, I would say the first generation of new media entrepreneurs, they were putting out a lot of content, but when we talk about sort of long shelf life content or credible content, they're probably today there's probably a much deeper cleaning up process across platforms by readers who want to then access that content, because there's just too much content.
So it's interesting, and why I asked you this question is that Time Magazine, Newsweek, are entirely digital. I've been a subscriber of Economist, I think, for the last 35 odd years, but only for the first time when I last renewed, I said no more print edition. Right? Is that happening? Happening only out of India, or do you see that change happening in India as well?
No, we very much see that change happening in India. I think in India the demographics determine what print medium is still growing versus what is not. So if you look at, I think a lot of the English medium, most of the publications, including national dailies, are finding a fairly steady as you go kind of model. Having said that, in the past decade, vernacular media in print has continued to grow very rapidly. Right. So that as I mentioned, in India, the demographics of literacy and sort of at a state level also, so the vernacular language part, is something that still continues to drive growth in the print industry. Right now, there's going to be a factor of time before I think those also get into a space where they identify very clear readers for their niche. But at the moment, if we talk about English dailies, we are seeing that trend where more and more readers are going towards their digital subscriptions, and we see that as well. So for DataQuest, BCQuest, we have very good growth in our digital subscribers. Of course, we are very B2B in nature, so so I think we already cover a lot of the ground as far as our industry is concerned very well. So that's I think a trend that will continue.
So as someone who's been looking at digital marketing, what is your view on the current digital marketing trends that we are seeing in our country?
So the digital marketing trend that is really, I think, going to be a driving force for ad spends in the coming 5 years is going to be programmatic. And programmatic effectively is a lot of automated media buying. Right? So effectively today, any CMO sitting down, who earlier was reaching out to a media planner, may end up saying that, look, with all the data that is available, and if an automated system is there, then I should be able to target the right audience with personalized creatives, and therefore, I'm getting a relevant ROI on it.
Correct.
So that helps a CMO build out a proper funnel in terms of, and with the attribution in place in terms of who I'm reaching out to, when I'm reaching out to, what is the message I'm reaching them out with. And I think there is now a big step towards bringing in a lot of automation, at least in the targeting bit.
Okay.
So the content part will continue to remain.
And when you say targeting of the consumers?
Targeting of the consumers, right? So in the digital medium, you can target again consumers based on wherever they are.
Slice and dice data, very, very.
Absolutely. So I think big data is energizing and empowering all of this. And I think programmatic as a system that is going to be really responsible for driving a lot of the digital transformation. Actually, if you look at the projections for growth in programmatic, most of the growth that in general digital ad spends are going to see are going to be driven through programmatic, and we see that across all platforms moving forward.
Okay. So my next question is an interesting segue from what you just said. How can brands succeed in the digital world? I mean, the old line of advertising was that only half of advertising succeeds,
right?
But nobody knows which half. The digital world has become even more complex,
right?
And you are the guru of this whole thing. What are your thoughts on this?
So, so one is that absolutely today digital marketing has become fairly complex because you have to put out content. Then you've got to distribute it effectively, as in make sure which are the platforms, including your website, where the content is going. Next is that how do you promote across that content or the ads against that content or otherwise very effectively, so that search engine optimization is there, social media marketing is there, obviously the creative part of it is there, then the targeting through SEMs is there, online reputation management, influencer marketing. So there are it's becoming a complex sort of area, and there are multiple strategies that any brand could deploy.
Correct.
I'd say the biggest thing that a brand should move towards is data, right? I think a lot of if you look at the past 2 centuries, a lot of power was with whoever, let's say, had the gunpowder, right? And then the gun was just sort of the tool, but the gunpowder was what enabled that. And I think data is, for the information age and the information century, going to be that part of the puzzle. So if you have control over data, and if you can slice and dice that effectively, right? By the way, that's a different challenge, which is sometimes there's again too much data, and it gets very noisy around what's good quality data. So it's very important to be able to understand what is valuable data, and then be able to derive the right results from it.
Correct. I agree. So tell me, all this data that is coming out. Before that, let me ask you a question. How is the digital economy going to change the ecosystem that we have in the country?
I mean, it's already dramatically underway. I think if we talk about the financial industry sector and FinTech, we're just scratching the surface, and there's already so much happening. And I think this government can be really given a pat on the back, at least for the UPI piece. That has ensured, and I think in fact a lot of other countries around the world are now doing case studies around the UPI piece and so on. So NCPI has, I think, done a very good job enabling payments. There continue to remain a lot of challenges. We are still scratching the surface, but I think a lot of automation will continue to reform this aspect in the country. Now this is just one sector that I've picked on, right? I think there are each and every sector today does get impacted by digital in a very major way. I think politics itself is something where a lot of technology, a lot of digital, a lot of sort of how to sort of get share of voice conversations. And by the way, I'm not talking about just sort of India. It's also, you look at the elections abroad, and they are having massive impact as far as social media platforms and so on is concerned. When we talk about manufacturing industry 4.0, a lot of digital there. The auto industry, a lot of automation and digital influence there. So I think it's already underway. It varies from industry to industry. But effectively, what I feel the trend that it enables is that there's a lot of democratization or localization of technology. It enables decision making at a very again localized level, which then allows for it to be used as per the people who do get impacted by those resources can take a decision that, okay, this is how we want to utilize those resources.
Interesting. So my next question is really, with so much data coming, and everyone seems to be putting all this data in the cloud, how do we address the privacy concerns and the safety of this data? I've got all my data in the cloud.
Right.
What happens if it gets stolen or lost?
So I think very, very pertinent question. I think the data privacy part is something which is got to be part of a right, fundamental right for every citizen. It is not codified in law as of now, or I should say effectively enough, because there are a lot of questions, a lot of gray areas, and of course currently the government is working on a draft, and there's a 30-person committee that's sitting on it. But data privacy, I think fundamentally will be a very critical part when we talk, especially when we talk about sexual preferences, health records, a lot of, your preference towards how your ideologies and so on. So I think there is, it's very, very important to protect them. Right? And how do individual citizens get empowered or empower themselves or take steps to protect themselves against all that information is something that really we need to look at very, very, very carefully, because data can be misused very easily.
I agree.
So if your personal data is being misused, who is responsible for that? Is it I think to a certain extent, we as individuals need to take up the onus of that. There need to be very effective laws. There need to be very strong laws that actually put the power back in the hands of individuals. To a certain extent, the GDPR laws in Europe are working on that and have done that.
What is GDPR?
So GDPR are basically data protection and privacy laws that have been brought about in Europe. If they basically conduct or regulate how data can be used, and what are the compliances, what are the okay that you need to get from an user to therefore be able to process that data, right? And it's very comprehensive in its nature. So even the Indian Data Protection Act that is coming out, a lot of the adoption of it is similar, but there's still a lot of things to be worked on.
Right. So Dhaval, my next question is really on the new buzzword, which is data is the new oil, right? And I was reading somewhere that we are in India the largest consumers of data, and it's probably the cheapest in the world. What are your thoughts on usage of this data?
So similar to, like I was sharing with you just now, I think India does generate a huge amount of data, which is absolutely correct. How do we harness that data, and who harnesses that data is very important, right? Do consumers, and I think there's a tug of war between, do consumers allow certain services to access to their data so that then they are able to get better services from those service providers? So that's one argument. And then do they not want to give away that data? So again, I think it comes down to a lot of user centricity on this aspect. I think India must make sure that they do have relevant checks and balances in place, again, so that the misuse of data does not happen. And I think there needs to be very, very strong action taken on misuse of data. There needs to be strong deterrence in place, basically. So we're still very much scratching the surface. With AI ML coming about, and definitely more data is required. Like we rightly said, data is the new oil. So it's I think oil also led to a lot of misuse and a lot of over the couple of centuries again. So since the industrial age, sort of power being concentrated with a few. So today we should make sure that we don't sort of go down that same path.
I agree. So my last question on data before I move to a few personal questions for you. There are these few big platforms, from a Facebook to a Twitter to a Google, and we've got millions of startups in our country. Right? How does a startup entrepreneur take full advantage of these multiple platforms?
Many ways. Given that these are very big organizations, I think for startups, one is that, okay, what are the level of services that they can get? And today, I think a lot of these startups do provide for special benefits for startups, right? So if they want hosting space, if they want, so, in some cases, there are incubators that these companies have. So depending on, what is their business plan and business model, they can get grants, they can get free hosting plans and things like that, right? So that's one part of it. Having said that, I think what startups really need to look at is that these behemoths are effectively, if they can get into partnerships and leverage the platforms in a manner that then helps them scale their business, right? So the cloud business is just one. That's where they just become a service provider, let's say a Google. But in other situations, can you become a Google partner, right? Then if that enables your business, then that may allow you to build on top of a lot of great infrastructure that a company like, let's say, Google Maps may have already done. And Google Maps is, I think, a very good example where a lot of startups globally have actually used that technology, built further on top of that, which then allows them to provide a service which is, very good quality service. And that's true for all the major platforms. I think that's true for Amazon. I mean, Amazon, when we talk about, let's say, again, in the commerce space, today, anybody who has anything to sell, is looking at going on Amazon. Now, can you therefore look at becoming harnessing that existing platform in a way which allows you to maximize your investment ROI? So there are lots of different ways of going about doing that, and it's important to therefore connect with the right people. Work towards a partnership, work towards sort of understanding how you can maximize the opportunity, and then build around it.
Wonderful. So Dhaval, a few questions for you personally now. You've been in business for several years. Are there any people who've had a strong influence on you? And if yes, what have been some of your learnings?
Sure. So I think a lot of my influence, one is from books, right? So the various books that I have read, they have. I feel that they've given me oftentimes good insights, good knowledge. Bill Gates is one that comes from. Jack Welch is another one. These days I'm sort of reading various things about sort of your personal performance and how to optimize your time, things like that. Of course, my influence also gets driven a lot through one is my father. So I've been even as a fly on the wall while growing up, got a chance to was lucky enough to learn a lot through that experience. And I think I also was blessed with a great group of friends through university. And they I think we used to participate in business plan competitions and so on. One of my very dear friends, came out with basically a feature phone app, which was all about booking cabs and sort of getting people to do ride sharing, which was a few years before Uber. But point is that we actually built those, worked on those things. So there was that exciting energy within the friend circle. So those were two definite influences. And then of course one meets and interacts with day in day out a huge number of people. So CyberMedia family, of course, did help me on that journey a lot as well.
Wonderful. So my next question would be that, what would be 3 words that define Dhaval?
So ambitious, family oriented, and hardworking.
Very good.
I'd like to change one of them to probably analytical, over analytical.
Over. Okay. Well, data is the new oil. So over an analytic is a fantastic thing to have, isn't it? Okay. So my next question is that when was the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time?
Mm, well, I this last year has been a lot of firsts because last February we were blessed with a boy,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
first time. I mean, it's my so that was this year there are a whole lot of firsts that we've been doing, and that's been a very I mean, it's been a fantastic and a fulfilling experience so far. So a lot of fun there. I think on technology, because we do invest now a lot of time and energy on technology. Switching gears, there we continue to really push ourselves every day in terms of how we can build better automation, better systems. One of the things that I'm now looking at or already doing is taking myself through sort of a Python-based course. Right. So that is something that is going to be part of a learning, and I haven't taken a course in a while, in a really long time. So it's actually a first since getting out of sort of formal education.
Yeah.
So it's something exciting. We're looking forward to it, and then the learning part cannot stop.
Right.
Right.
Learning continues all the time.
Absolutely.
So that was my last question to you, and this is a question I ask all my guests. It's on failure. Indians or Asians don't teach children that it's okay to fail. Right. It's always first out, we are the head of the class, we are the right. And yet we fail all the time on various occasions. Right. What have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes or failures?
I think that'll take a half an hour session in itself, but I think so. Few things that I'd like to point out is that one is with respect to our CyberMedia journey, and we earlier started with traditional media and how that's been transforming, right? And also the digital industry is one where things move very rapidly. Yeah. So I think we have had to constantly try and create new things, and then say that, hey, this hasn't worked out, and then try again new things. And so failure there, and trying to continue to make sure that we are doing better and better and better in terms of what we can provide for our readers and customers, is something that cannot be taken for granted. Okay. Right? That is something which is very fundamental, very important. And I think that only makes you stronger. Okay. That makes you learn, that makes you stronger. So that's one part of it. I think even when we look at various startups as from an investment point of view, right? It's important to start out by saying that it's not necessary that each and every one of your investments are going to completely succeed. In fact, most of the startups are going to have a challenging time and probably fail. And so through that journey, again, it's an opportunity for you to learn what, why, how, when, and so on. It's a constant, right? So failure, both at a personal level, where our business has seen a lot of transformation, and how I think we have emerged stronger from that, and we're pretty excited about the roadmap ahead. Yeah. As well as when we talk about other business and sort of investing in them or mentoring them, and how their success can be further enhanced, improved, and so on. And so failure, I think, is something that is a companion, and one has to continue to learn from that journey. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Correct. Failure at the end of the day is not a sort of deal breaker in life. It's just a chance to do something new, actually. Correct. So that's how I look at it.
Dhaval, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I wish you lots of success.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. And I think a lot of the programs are absolutely fantastic. So this is a wonderful initiative.
Yours, absolutely.
And looking forward to see many, many more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.